Most of the Nazi forces surrendered to the Allies during the first week of May 1945. During the following days, the remaining German resistance units stationed in Czechoslovakia, Greece, Poland, and Yugoslavia also fell, and soon France was isolated. German submarines also surrendered to the Americans during that time, dropping their weapons in the United States and Latin America. However, there was still one unit left, a weather reporting team stationed in the Arctic archipelago of Svalbard, not far from Northern Norway. They were the men from Operation Haudegen, a mission so secret that even the Nazis forgot about them. Weather forecast. Weather forecast was a fundamental part of military strategy planning during World War II. During the earlier stages of the war, this information was usually obtained by aircraft and naval units, and it was so vital and sensitive that it was primarily transmitted in code. As the Germans kept losing vehicles that provided weather conditions, the Army set its sights on land-based weather stations in the Arctic. These posts were also critical, as the air that passed through the area could help predict what would happen over the North Atlantic Ocean and continental Europe. One such station was placed in the Svalbard archipelago. Located 650 miles away from the North Pole, and roughly the same distance north of Norway, the post allowed the Nazis to monitor weather conditions on the Allied convoy routes taking off from Iceland to deliver essential material to the Russians. In Svalbard, also known as Spitsbergen, the islands were filled with white-peaked mountains and large rivers at the bottom of steep, frosty valleys. The archipelago had several fjords along its western coast, and although the winters provided a lot of snow, there was no visible ice on the ocean during the summer. During the 1920s, colonists from different European countries were attracted to the area after a treaty neutralized the islands, and Svalbard became an important mineral hunting and fishing source. Before the war broke out in 1939, the island's population was 3,000, mostly made up of Norwegian and Russian miners who evenly divided their findings. The occupying Germans eventually took control of the island's oil fields and weather stations by 1941, and the civilian population was evacuated. By then, the Nazis had complete control over Norway. Still, when the Soviet Union fell to Germany in July, the Allies sent military forces to Svalbard to destroy or capture the enemy installations. Operation Haudegen. For 3 years, both parties conducted several operations to install their own weather posts in the Arctic while destroying the other ones in their way. On August 5, 1944, during one such operation, 11 German men departed from Northern Norway and headed for Svalbard on a top-secret mission. A U-boat and a supply vessel dropped the unit off at the island with equipment, weapons, ammunition, and supplies. The expedition leader was Dr. Lieutenant Wilhelm Dege of the Naval Artillery, a scientist who had previous knowledge of Spitsbergen, as he had already traveled to the area years before the war. He then returned to the Arctic in 1940 as part of the Wehrmacht during the invasion of Norway. Dege was handpicked 4 years later by Nazi top brass to head this secretive meteorological mission, in which he would be both the military and scientific chief. The team also consisted of a deputy chief scientist, a meteorologist, several corporals, radio operators, members of the meteorological service, naval artillery privates, and a camp leader. With the exception of Dege and one other man, the rest of Operation Haudegen's team were no older than 21. The men had also received training to deal with the hardship and learned how to ski, build igloos, cook, pull infected teeth, and basic health protocols, including frozen limb removal. As they reached Svalbard, the unit set up a weather station near one of the fjords, erecting huts with wooden panels and white nets as camouflage, and immediately began sending weather reports back to a German base in Tromsø, Northern Norway. From December of 1944, the station transmitted encrypted weather intelligence to the Tromsø base 5 times a week. In addition, they also released a hydrogen-filled weather balloon 5 miles into the air to obtain data from the upper atmosphere on a weekly basis. The remainder of the time, the men explored the area, studied geography, mathematics, and philosophy with Dege. They were also able to build a sauna to relax in. Despite having plenty of food to last 2 years, the unit also enjoyed hunting reindeer to eat. According to Siegfried Schapke, an 18-year-old radio operator who gave an interview to Der Spiegel magazine in 2010, quote, "It was an unforgettable experience. We had everything but beer." Despite the occasional delicacies and relatively comfortable life, weather conditions in the Arctic were harsh, as December temperatures dropped as low as -40 degrees Celsius. The men also had to carry rifles every time they went outside, as polar bears roamed the area. For an entire year, the men of Operation Haudegen dutifully sent their reports, which were of vital importance during the German offensive of the Battle of the Bulge. War is over. On April 24, 1944, the men stationed in Svalbard received a notification from the German command post in Tromsø requesting them to prepare a landing zone for 2 aircraft near the base. In his journals, Lieutenant Dega wrote that at the time of the request, the team already knew that the end of the war was near and that they were the defeated ones. Eager to come home, the detachment members on the island quickly removed the icy and slippery irregularities in the bay and formed a cross made out of cloth to signal a landing area for the upcoming pilots. However, no aircraft arrived after a week of receiving the warning, and by May 2nd, they received the news that the Führer had fallen. 6 days later, another message from Tromsø arrived claiming that the war was over. Lieutenant Dega and his men were ordered to destroy secret documents, and the group quickly burned the papers. By May 9th, one of the team members intercepted unencrypted meteorological reports sent by the Soviets, which was a first and a clear sign that the war was over. The detachment remained in contact with the Tromsø station until May 24th. After that day, the men received no further news from anyone. Operation Haudegen was now stranded in the Arctic. A call for help. The German team tried to contact the base several times to no avail. Despite having 2 years' worth of food rations, they were afraid of being stuck in the frozen archipelago. They had no way to leave the base and only counted with a rowboat. For weeks, they continued to spend their time issuing meteorological observations, collecting scientific information, and exploring the island. The group also collected all the remaining documents in the base and put them in a sealed metal box that they buried 55 yards south of the weather station. Desperate to go home and find out about their families, they continually transmitted their coordinates on the wavelengths used by the Allies, hoping for any vessel to listen. By the end of August, Norwegian authorities finally answered their calls and assured the stranded men that a ship would set sail towards the archipelago soon. On September 2nd, 1945, months after the men received the last incoming message, Japan surrendered to the Allies, officially ending World War II. The following day, a seal-hunting Norwegian ship led by Captain Ludvig Albertsen arrived in Svalbard to rescue them. The Germans were elated and invited the Norwegians for a joint celebratory meal in their station. Dega had learned Norwegian from his years as an interpreter and said, quote, "Shall we start our official business right here on the beach, or may I invite you to our station for a coffee and a schnapps?" Then Albertsen replied, quote, "Real coffee and a good German schnapps? Yes, of course." Upon boarding the Norwegian ship, Dr. Lieutenant Dega handed his weapon to Captain Albertsen in a gesture of surrender. He then uttered, quote, "With this, I surrender." To which Albertsen replied, quote, "May I keep the pistol?" Dega and Albertsen then signed the last official surrender document of the war before heading to Europe. Back home. After leaving Svalbard, the men arrived in Tromsø, where they became prisoners of war for 3 more months. When they finally returned to their country, they found their once glorious land divided and sunk in misery. The 11 men from Operation Haudegen were separated by the Iron Curtain dividing Germany and never reunited. Still, in 2004, 60 years after the end of the war, 2 of the survivors met again for a trip to the Svalbard archipelago. After returning to Germany, Lieutenant Dega returned to his scientific studies and became a professor at Dortmund Pedagogical University. In 1985, his son, Eckhard Dega, arranged and funded an operation to retrieve the buried metal box left in Svalbard. When they opened it, the documents were all still in mint condition, and they also found personal handwritten letters by the members of the detachment. To this day, the German Haudegen station is still standing, and it is used as an emergency shelter. Thank you for watching our Dark Docs channel. Make sure to subscribe to all our other channels for more exciting videos on historical content. And don't forget to hit the bell icon to be notified of our newest videos.